Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here we're doing a dedicated audio review of the Jaguar I-Pace. If you'd like a detailed review of the vehicle itself, do check it up on your pod banner, down in the description below, or indeed in the pinned comments. Now, as standard in the S and SE trims, you've got the Meridian audio system that has 12 speakers that output 400 watts. If, however, you want the 3D surround Meridian audio system in either of these trim levels, you'll have to shell out an additional £610. But this does come as standard in the HSE trim, and that's exactly what we have on review. The 3D surround audio system by Meridian has 17 speakers that output a whopping 750 watts. Now, in terms of the placement of the audio drivers in the standard S or SE trims of the I-Pace, you'll find a tweeter and woofer driver within each of the 4 doors. There is a further mid-range driver within the front doors as well, and then you have got a center speaker found towards the dashboard. To bolster the overall sub-bass performance, you've then got a subwoofer towards the boot. Now, in the upgraded 3D Meridian audio system, all of these still exist, but you do also have some speakers on the rear parcel shelf, an additional speaker on terms of the dashboard, and you also have height speakers, in other words, ones that are found just at the top of the front passengers. Now, for you to tinker around with the audio drivers and indeed adjust your own EQ, you'll have to tinker around with a 10-inch infotainment system. Now, in the 3D Meridian audio system, it's a shame not to see dedicated mid-range and high-range frequency adjustments. Instead, they're lobbed within the treble EQ. Here I've adjusted it up by a few notches, and as for the bass and subwoofer adjustments, I've taken 1 notch off respectively. Now, as for the surround modes, you've got stereo, the Meridian, and then the Meridian 3D audio system. In my case, I've left it in terms of its middle configuration because I felt that it added extra sort of height information and width information whilst still preserving a little bit of accuracy. While going for the extreme, in other words, the full-on 3D experience, I felt this really hindered the overall audio accuracy. Of course, you can go for the stereo output if you want more of a reference sound, but I feel here most consumers will be left a little bit disappointed by the lackluster Soundstage reproduction. Now, when it comes to connectivity, the infotainment system has Bluetooth connectivity, whereby the SBC and AAC codecs are supported only. It's a shame not to see higher fidelity audio codecs supported, but nevertheless, if you do want to achieve better quality playback, I would suggest for you to plug in your smartphone via the Type-C or Type-A ports found towards the center armrest, and here you'll also have access to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Now, moving on, I should also reference cabin noise, and here at a standstill I recorded 36 dBA, while driving at around 30 to 20 miles an hour, 58 dBA, driving around 40 miles an hour, 63 dBA, and driving at 70 miles an hour, around 73 dBA. Now, these figures are not too bad, but in comparison to some of its competitors, I was expecting a little better cabin insulation. Here I noted a little bit of wind deflecting off the A-pillars, and also a little bit of noise that creeps in from the tyres. Note we have the 20-inch rims fitted on the I-Pace that we have on review, so it's just worth considering that you might get a little bit of lower tyre noise if you go for the smaller sized rims. Now, with all of that said and done, let's get on to an audio demo. I'll be placing the camera and microphone in 4 separate locations and also going through the different stereo outputs, at least in the 3D Meridian audio system, for you to potentially hear the differences in terms of the spatial sounds. Now, the song we'll be using is from Priya J. It's called Falling. You can hear it for yourself or indeed purchase it down in the description below in case you're interested.
You should hide, then learn how to fly. It's the only way you know how to play. Game to success, I'm not quite sussed it yet. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always think, and now you should hide, then learn how to fly. The only way I know how to play this game to success, I'm not quite sussed it yet. When I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always think, and now thing is my imagination is constantly racing 1,000 miles ahead. I'm living in my own mind, but it's floating. I'm always hoping. But when I reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always think, and now imagination is constantly racing 1,000 miles ahead. I'm living in my own mind, but it's floating. I'm always hoping. reach the brink, don't stop to think. I always think, and now
Now with the audio demo out of the way, let's get onto my subjective opinion, because of course hearing an audio playback over YouTube and of course it being compressed isn't ideal. Now here the sub-bass extension is good, but was just a little bit lackluster. I just felt it needed to be a little bit more prolonged in the lower echelons of the bass frequency tones. Here, if I compare it to the likes of the Volvo XC40 Recharge Twin Pro or the Kia Soul EV, which both house a Harman Kardon audio system, the Jaguar I-Pace really can't compete with some of its competitors. Similarly, when it comes to its mid-bass, it just lacks a little bit of extra punch. And yes, I did dial one notch down in terms of the bass EQ, and that's purely because its bassy profile did hinder the mid-range reproduction. Speaking of which, the mids here just felt a little bit recessed, and due to the lack of a dedicated mid-range and high-range frequency adjustment through the infotainment system, it meant that dialing up the treble EQ meant that I was also dialing up the high-end extension, which after a certain point does become a bit too sibilant and harsh, and therefore creates a bit of ear fatigue. Ultimately, what I'm trying to portray over here is that it's got a little bit of a recessed mid-range, and therefore I was just expecting a little bit more of a forward-sounding overall reproduction, specifically given the price tag of the vehicle or the fact that we are using a Meridian audio system. Here, in terms of the highs, as I just mentioned, they do extend pretty well, but you should just bear in mind that the treble EQ is going to be adjusting the highs, so therefore you don't want to go too much to make it overzealous. Now finally onto the soundstage, and here the overall width and depth information is pretty good, specifically with the 3D Meridian audio system, whereby you've got the extra height information that's being portrayed via the top firing speakers, at least for the front passengers. As for the instrument separation, I was expecting a little bit better, given that we've got 16 speakers within the cabin, of course the 17th being the subwoofer, but unfortunately it just didn't quite compete with some of the more premium audio systems out there on the market. Ultimately here the overall soundstage is good, but not as good as one might expect for a vehicle that costs upwards of £65,000. And really this is my verdict of the audio system. It's neither great nor bad. I just potentially would have expected more for a premium vehicle, specifically one that uses a Meridian audio system as standard, let alone the upgraded Meridian audio system that one can find in the I-Pace. And as a result, if you're a true audiophile, you might be left a little bit disappointed or just want a little bit more. If you're a regular consumer, then of course the regular Meridian audio system in the S or SE trims will suffice, but if you want that extra height information that I previously referenced, then you might want to consider upgrading for around £610 for the 3D Meridian audio system. Now do let me know in the comments below what you make of the audio system within the Jaguar I-Pace, be it if you own it or have demoed it at, let's say, a showroom. I'll be intrigued to hear your thoughts. Now if you've liked this detailed independent review and would like to see more, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.